Whitney Sewell is the founder and CEO of LifeBridge Capital LLC, a company that currently has over $50 million in multifamily real estate assets under management. Whitney is also the host of the daily podcast, The Real Estate Syndication Show. Whitney has a track record of service, having served in the National Guard, Kentucky State Police, and the U.S. Department of Transportation. His deep-rooted faith, desire to serve and help others, and investment success have given him a clear purpose and path to help provide orphans an opportunity to find a loving family through adoption. All right, Whitney Sewell, welcome to the show.
My pleasure. Glad to be here, Don.
Definitely happy to have you on here. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know you've got a lot going on. You're running a daily podcast show yourself here, so you're quite a busy guy there. So why don't we go ahead and get started, and you just tell our listeners a little bit about your background and how you got started in real estate syndication.
Thank you, Don. Yes, happy to do that and happy to be here with you today. And, to go, I guess about 10 or 11 years ago, or even further back than that, I was in the military. I spent a year in Iraq. So obviously this is satellite image view, but came home and tried to figure out, what I was going to do as a career, as a job. I didn't grow up around entrepreneurs or anybody in real estate, and my eyes were not opened yet to this possibility, of what you can accomplish in real estate, how many people have built wealth in real estate. So came home and I became a police officer with Kentucky State Police. There were 5 positions, 1,200 applicants, and I was blessed to have, to get one of them. I loved working the road as a police officer, but quickly found out that I had an income problem. I mean, making $30,000 to $35,000 a year, working every night, weekend, and holiday, it just obviously, there was an income problem. So I started searching for something to supplement my income, and I was exposed to real estate and through Rich Dad Poor Dad and some other books at the time, just getting started. And I realized that lots of people have created wealth in real estate. So this is something I could do to supplement our income. I wasn't married yet, or was about to be married, so got married, and then also passing each other in the hallway the first whole year of marriage. It was like, this is not what's best for my family either. This job that I had, but quickly purchased 2 triplexes, and those 2 triplexes taught us a lot the hard way. But we may talk about that a little more, but it was a big challenge. We were newly married and jumped into real estate as well, while both of us working full time. And we were remodeling a house at the same time. And I mean, it was a lot, obviously just being married as well. However, bought those triplexes, then became a federal agent. I left the state police and went federal and became a special agent for the U.S. DOT. That moved us to Virginia, kept buying small multis and single family homes. And then, it was an issue that I couldn't grow fast enough. I couldn't scale the business. And so at that time, or a few years later, I learned about the syndication business. I had no idea that this means of investing in real estate was even out there. If you had said, Whitney, you could go buy a 100-unit complex, I would have laughed at you and said, "There's no way." I don't know who those guys are that can do that. Who can do that? That'd be many years from now. But I learned more about the business and discovered that I loved that business a lot more than me searching for more tenants and toilets. And so, because I can scale faster, I can grow a professional brand and business and work with professionals. And that's exactly what we've done. But I'll back up just a little bit. When we moved to Virginia, my wife and I were exposed to the adoption process. This will seem really off the wall for just a minute, but we were exposed to another family and a pastor who had adopted some children, and it opened our eyes to the possibility of adopting. And we just, our question to ourselves was, why would we not? Not why should we, but why would we not? So within a week, we submitted our application to adopt from Ethiopia. And 2 years later, to the month, our first son came home. Well, now we've done that process 4 times, actually, with 1 failed placement. But, we've adopted 3 children, and the Lord has just blessed our family through that process, and obviously with our children. But it was very challenging. It was extremely challenging. It's just the adoption process. Very worthwhile, okay? But that gave us a big mission and a why. And so our big why at LifeBridge Capital is helping other families through that adoption process, financially and just through the process. And so, that really gave us a big push on the syndication business. Like now, that's our why, that's our mission behind what we're doing. And so, but now we're purchasing and operating, 100 plus unit, 150 plus unit apartment complexes and growing.
Got it. So can we go back to the triplex? So just wanted to make sure I understood this correctly. So your very first deal that you did was 2 triplexes that you purchased.
It was.
Okay, so you basically jumped right into multifamily. So how exactly did that come about?
My mindset at the time was I wanted to scale. I felt like, okay, multifamily was what I wanted to do just because of the scalability and buying more units at one time. However, I still was not educated enough. We bought these 2 triplexes. I didn't understand the market well enough. I knew no one there in that market. I had not networked. It was actually even in a town where my wife and I was not living. We were planning to move to this town, within the next few months. But I knew nothing about the area like I needed to anyway. And obviously looking back, I can see so many mistakes. But we learned so much because I didn't do proper due diligence. I didn't know the market. Like I said, I didn't know anybody there that could even help me, through the process or just to connect with. Even hiring, a big mistake or a big challenge, during that property was problems with the property that were not found during our due diligence. And so, I hired a big name company to come, and a guy came to help me do an inspection of the property. I followed him on every nook and cranny and every attic space and all, around everywhere. And while I thought he did a great job, gave me a nice printed out booklet and all, made it look so nice. However, he wasn't an expert on, in roofing. He wasn't an expert in HVAC, like numerous things that where obviously I know now, okay, I need an expert in HVAC, to actually tell me more details about these units. How long are they going to last? What's the life of, how much life is left? So we can plan on those things, which we didn't know, at the time. I just put all my trust in this fancy, truck this guy was driving and the fancy folder that he handed me, in which he did a good job, but he wasn't a specialist in those things. And that turned out later to hurt us, and then obviously are also, just leading the business with my heart, trying to help the tenants or, I had one lady that, she came to me with her father. She really wanted this apartment but, she couldn't afford it. But her father was signing with her. So I allowed her, to do it. And she was late every month. She paid a late fee every month. And a few months in, I sat down with her and laid out a budget for her and, like put everything, all her expenses and all these things, thinking I'm trying to help her. I even said, okay, you're going to be late for 2 more months. However, at that point you can get ahead, like made a plan. Of course it never worked, but, learned a lot the hard way, but we're better off for that now. Obviously things have changed a lot. That was, more than 10 years ago, but those things that we learned still apply to, our business today.
Mm-hmm. Great. So it gave you a great fundamental foundation, the fundamentals, to prep you for much larger scale projects. So can you kind of walk us briefly through the transition from these smaller triplexes to the larger, 100 plus units that you guys have been working on?
Yes. So, we bought those 2 triplexes and then quickly I got a different job, as a federal agent, and we moved to Virginia. And so after moving to Virginia, we sold those triplexes probably 6 months or so after that. Yeah. I mean, you can imagine the difficulty. We were about 7 to 8 hours from there, and we're trying to self-manage still. And so, lots of things learned through that process as well. Very difficult, making many trips, obviously back and forth, trying to self-manage, even driving that far to show units, over a weekend and drive back, things like that. Or even buy, I even bought appliances like in Virginia, put them in my truck and took them there and we put them in over the weekend and then come back,
Wow.
just crazy stuff, but just trying to make it happen, but I didn't understand business well then. I didn't understand, just the value in hiring somebody to help do those things, thinking I'm going to do it myself. And obviously those, a lot of that's obviously changed now. But we learned a lot from that process and can look back now. and be thankful for some of those things we learned. But after moving to Virginia, I kept trying to scale the business. We bought some small multis and some single families as well, but still didn't scale. And it was just the difficulty of working full time and trying to make that happen, and a family and those things. And so it wasn't this thing yet that I just really burned the bridge and jumped in.
Mhm.
And so just kind of piddling with it and hoping that something would come of it, kind of without a real plan. And so a few years later, we were pursuing another adoption process. There were many things like that going on, and we said, you know what, the real estate business is going to produce cash flow. I had another business as well, but it was never going to be passive. It was always going to require me to be there. And my clients were always going to want me to work with them personally. And so it was never going to be passive. I was always going to have to be there. It was always going to require lots of time. So it finally hit me one day that, okay, I'm just going to push all that to the side. I'm going to turn that off completely. And we're going to focus on the syndication business. And we're just going to jump into that because I know that's what will work. And I feel like that's the best fit for us. And so that's what we did. And quickly hired a mentor to help me get there. And that was a
Mhm.
big step for me, mentally and financially at the time. But that was a turning point.
Mm. So your turning point or magic moment would be, the first thing was focus. You kind of got rid of some of the other distractions that you had in life, and you were able to focus solely on syndication. And then the second thing would be hiring your mentor, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then this is
Yes.
kind of what it essentially propelled you, going forward into these larger projects, these larger apartment communities or multifamily syndications. Okay, got it.
Yes.
Makes
It
sense.
was a mindset shift. I mean, we sold a farm, we sold everything. Yeah. I mean, just so I can just be focused on this.
Got it. Okay, got it. So let's kind of go through this. I mean, because you've got clearly a lot of experience, and I've listened to many of your podcasts. So let's kind of walk our listeners through some of the challenges, that you've experienced throughout your career. Something that you think would be worth sharing. So, what are some of the most notable challenges that you faced?
Yeah. And you're talking about after I got into the syndication business.
Sure. Yes.
Yes. So, you know, first thing, and when I first started this, going to conferences. I mean, I was going to conferences all over the country, just as hard as I could go. For the last couple of years, and initially, I hear people talk about your mindset and your why and all those things, and there's so much focus on that. And in the beginning, ultimately, my mindset then was like, come on, let's get to the nuts and bolts of this, and let's tell me how to make this happen. I really didn't put enough emphasis on my why or my mindset. And even though I had been trained in the military and in the police academy and, all this time, like as far as mindset, and knew how important it was, I was not applying it to my business, in real estate. And so it was, after hiring that mentor, and after just being completely committed to this business, that okay, like I started to see that okay, like my mindset is so important, because I initially, and for a long time, I'd be willing to work 15, 16-hour days for many, many days a week for 2 years, ultimately. And that, it's been very challenging, to say the least, to get a business and brand like that started. And like you said, working full time. Okay. And most people don't realize that. And I'm happy to share that, while working full time, also, going through really two adoption processes, which is very, anyway, it takes up so much time and to do that, but also doing a daily podcast, which I can't even tell you how much work that is. And then also doing deals, also purchasing large apartment complexes, doing
Hmm.
capital raises, all these things, all at one time. And so, when, some people say, oh, I'm doing real estate full time, but I can't do a podcast. I'm like, well, come on, like you can, it's like, if you want to, you'll do it, but I'll say, so that's been a big challenge, right? It's been a big challenge to structure my time, very wisely, and have a calendar that's very structured, but ultimately building a team. And I mean, and that has been crucial from the very beginning. And the podcast helped me with that, because I knew from the very beginning of doing a daily podcast that I was not going to be able to edit the audio or edit the video or do the show notes, or, I mean, there's no way. There's no way that I could have done all of that. And I knew that if I even tried, that I would not have been able to keep up, and I probably would have quit. Right. So I built a team from the beginning to do all those things, and learned a lot, from doing that, but then also apply that to, other parts of the business now as well. So quickly had an assistant, quickly had there's 4 assistants from all over the world that were doing different things for the podcast almost every day, not to mention a personal assistant that was helping me keep all those things going, while I'm at my day job. She's working hard doing other things, for my real estate business, and so, but the challenge too is that I couldn't be at home, with the family, or if I'm at home, I'm in the office till midnight, then I'm back in the office taking phone calls at 5 a.m. some mornings.
Wow.
No joke. Like I would have my calendar open from say 5 to 7. My day job would start at 7, but I would have my calendar open so people could schedule calls, from 5 to 7 a.m. And then from the time I got off in the afternoon till 8 or 9 at night, I would just have investor calls or, meetings with people. And so, or be recording shows, just like this. So, I think, people do not understand the commitment it's going to take to launch a brand, to launch a professional business, to really learn the business as well, but then, having that mindset from the beginning. So, when you get kicked in the face, it's going to happen, that you're going to get back up and you're going to keep going, and you're going to keep going and you're going to keep going. And I want to say, one valuable, my most valuable team member is my wife. And so, we have three small kids and a newborn now, or 6-month-old, and she's doing everything in the house and has been for a couple of years, everything, and I just give her so much credit, because if she was not, just the team member that she is, obviously in our family, but, she's not into real estate. However, she's very, she feels very strongly about our why and our mission. And she sees us getting there. She sees us getting to that and helping other families in the adoption process and the brand that we're building. But if she wasn't willing to work so hard every day, in managing the house and taking care of the kids and me, like this could not happen. Yeah. I would not be able to spend 15, 16 hours a day for 2 years in our office, while she's doing everything else, and her, go along with that if she wasn't, or, on our team, and just really behind the mission as well.
Okay. Excellent. I think, you've brought up a few really good points that I'd like to kind of, I took some notes down while you were speaking. I'd like to kind of hone in on a little bit. I think the first one would be, and maybe a lot of listeners and people have been faced with this issue too, because I know I have in the past. It's how exactly do you find your why? I think that's probably a question that a lot of people do have. How do you find your why? It's like some people say, oh yeah, my why, I just want to make X number, of dollars a year. Or you hear some people, I want to give so much to charity a year. But really, is that your why? Because you still have those people that they'll go out there, they'll put forth a lot of effort maybe this week, but then next week they're like, oh, I'm just too tired, I don't want to keep going. Like you said, you're putting in 15, 16 hour, plus hours a day. You're getting up 5 o'clock in the morning, holding meetings and doing these things. How do you push through that? And you said your why is going to push you through that. So how do you find your why?
That's a great question. And it is, like the stamina and keeping on going is not easy. I don't downplay that, because obviously you do get tired, and there's days where it's like, man, this is, I'm still recording interviews or taking phone calls at 9 p.m. or after, and I've been in here since 5 a.m. or, like you have to have something bigger than yourself, that you're pursuing after. And obviously, I'm a Christian, and I just feel, the Lord has given me faith, and it's only from him that we can do this and that I can keep pushing through. My wife says, you're either crazy or you just have a lot of faith, because it is. I mean, it's, there's times where it's like, wow, is it worth this? You start asking, is it worth this? I'm missing all this time with the family, missing all this time with my kids. But I have a bigger picture in mind. I keep, remembering that, the families we're going to be able to help, through the adoption process. There's over 160 million orphans in the world, and so many families would love to adopt, but they can't because of the $40,000 to $60,000 price tag to go through the process, it's unfortunate, but it's not the child's fault,
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to be able to help those families, and just also, leaving my day job and be able to have more time with the family. It is a big sacrifice to not be able to be in the house and not be able to be at meals and things like that with the family like I want to be. But I have the bigger picture in mind. I have the bigger picture in mind. All the time I'm going to gain when I, leaving the day job and be able to do it full time, and just the way that changes things. But finding your why, it's got to be something that you're passionate about. Because when you're speaking to people, like they can see the passion in you. When it's something bigger than yourself. It can't be about a new car, or personally, I don't think it can be about getting a new car or being your why, or getting a bigger house or things like that. Especially when you're speaking to investors and you're going to tell them your why, they don't care about you getting a new car, but they do like being a part of something that's bigger than just the financial reward. Okay. And I didn't plan that in the beginning, but that's been a big way that's allowed me to stand out. And like I said, I didn't have any idea it was going to work that way, but talking to investors, if you're at a conference and they're talking to 100, 200 multifamily investors, and you go talk to them about multifamily investing, they're not going to have a clue who you are the next hour, much less the next day or month later. Okay. But when you can talk about your why and your mission and why you're doing what you're doing, and it's something much bigger than real estate and the financial gains and, a new car, whatever, like they're going to remember who you are, because it's different, like you said. And that's what happened to me. And I, like I said, I didn't plan it that way, but the Lord had a greater plan, and it's allowed me to stand out, because of that. And, we committed half of our profits, to this why and this mission, and it doesn't affect investor returns, but however, they get to play a big role in that why and in that mission. But that was something that we were passionate about. We went through the struggles of the financial burden of adoption and just getting through that, and have spoken to so many families who won't even start the process because of that. And that's what, where our why came from.
Got it. So having this strong why is really kind of pushing you through. I mean, you said you have your full-time job still. You're still working on syndications, family, and a daily podcast. So I'm sure people are curious too. You mentioned the assistants and some things, but what's your calendar look like? How are you managing all this?
Yes, great question. And I almost wish I could show you a picture of my calendar, but it's very, like, using a tool like Appointlet or Calendly, something like that. I mean, it's been crucial, and I mean, but being very purposeful with the types of appointments that I allow people to book. So like I have big recording days, like today, I'm being interviewed on your show. I'm being interviewed on another show, and I will personally record up to a dozen shows today myself. Okay. Back to back to back. And I may have 2 or 3 phone calls scheduled after that. Okay. So it's being willing to, really jump in and it just being willing to run a marathon. It ultimately is. And so, people tell me, well, recording 3 or 4 shows a day just makes me so tired. And it's a mindset. It's like, okay, but if I told you had to record 20 shows today, and then I said, and you wrapped your head around that, then all of a sudden I said, well, I'm just kidding. It's just 12. You'd be like, okay, I can do 12 now. So it's a mindset. It's a mindset. And so, my first day, it's about 1.5 years ago of recording shows. I think I did 3 shows the very first day. Then the next day was 5, I think. And then the next day was 8. And then rarely have I done less than 8 on a long recording day. I'll have some afternoons where I'll record 3 or 4 shows. But I have a couple long recording days every month where I'll try to schedule at least a dozen, if not more shows, but that, like I said, that doesn't count. Sometimes that's the days I'll also be interviewed on other podcasts, or that I'll also have other phone calls with investors and things like that. So it's being willing to work a lot of hours, and it's not because I'm some genius or so smart, but I am willing to work really hard. And there's lots of people that will work really hard, but there's not that many, honestly, and if you're willing to just keep going and putting in the hours, things start to happen. And so my schedule, though, it being very purposeful with my schedule, as soon as I get off work, I have meetings, I have phone calls, and like I said, in the mornings as well sometimes. And I've started to be, or even block off time though, where I have to have more family time at home. Cause
Mm-hmm.
I've been, even though I've been home, I've been gone for like 2 years, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And that's not good, but it's a sacrifice that we knew it would take for a while, to make this happen. So anyway, but being very purposeful and using my calendar, my whole team has my calendar, my wife has my calendar, but my assistant has been crucial in that as well. And she schedules things for me, even like the show and communicating with you and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So it seems as though so you have a few moving parts here. So one, you mentioned time blocking,
Mm-hmm.
which seems to be really, really helpful and crucial for you as well. Also, you said that you have an assistant that manages your calendar. So you typically don't have to touch the calendar. You have another person that does that for you. And basically it's just like, you, Whitney's like, okay, I'm here. I'm showing up for work. This is on my schedule. I got to do it. And that's just the mindset that you have, right?
That is a lot of it. And she
Mm-hmm.
schedules, a lot of my appointments, or like if I'm going to be interviewed on a show, she's handling all that because we've talked about it. She knows like these are the times that I'm available to be interviewed, and it's usually on the days that I'm doing interviews as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's the days that I have off the day job where I can get all that stuff done. And I just have a long day, just back to back to back of things, or in the afternoons as well. But I mean, I'm very hands-on on my calendar, but
Mm-hmm.
she's a big part of it, because when we set rules, like this is when I can do these things, or if somebody emails me and says, hey, I'd love for you to do this, or, could we meet for coffee, or, there's times, and here's a big thing about your calendar and getting things done. You have to say no,
Mm-hmm.
and especially when you're this busy, you have to be very purposeful with my time. It's very worthwhile for me to be interviewed on your show and other shows, and I want to do that. But, there's times when, somebody may ask, hey, could we go get coffee? And I want to, but it's not the highest and best use of my time at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and so I have to say no, or, maybe in 2 weeks, or I'll put it on the calendar in 2 weeks, or, something like that. So you have to be willing to say no to many things. And I've had to do that. There's, I can't go out with friends and, do lots of things that they want to do, I have a bigger purpose in mind, and
Mm-hmm.
not that those things are bad. It's just, I'm having to say no to that so I can say yes to a bigger purpose and this why and this mission that my family and I are pursuing.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So how about, I mean, I know for myself when I get really busy, I just have to have, at the end of each day, I have to have that personal time. And I go to what I call my fortress of solitude. And I just sit down, I'll pick up a book, or I'll put on like some sort of a documentary, and I'll just kind of, relax. That's like my downtime. And then usually I'll say like a prayer, maybe read something from, the Bible, and then I'll go to bed. And that kind of usually like winds me down. So, with a busy schedule like yours, what do you usually do, or how do you find this type of time, for yourself? How do you work that in?
That's a good question. And I would say, something that changed for me a couple years ago was really being more purposeful about my morning. Okay. My morning routine. Of course, you can get on YouTube and find millions of videos, millions of hours of people talking about morning routines. And it is important. It is so important, and how your day starts and your mindset right away. And so, immediately, it's a little over 2 years ago now, probably, 2.5, maybe 3 years ago, I started, being up at like 4:30 every morning. Okay. And I'm probably around 5 o'clock now, but being up early and thinking through my morning, but really structuring my morning the night before, or thinking about, what am I going to be doing in the morning, and thinking that through a little bit, having somewhat of a plan. And then that plan will change. You'll find better ways or different things you need to get done in the morning to structure that time. However, that changed a lot for me, like being up early and thinking through my day, but right away in the mornings, that's when I'm going to spend time with the Lord. That's when I'm going to be in
Mhm.
the Word. That's when I'm going to be praying, and my wife and I do that together. We're sitting in the same room, even though we're we're both reading or praying or, whatever, but it's also great discussion time for me and her. We don't get a lot of other time together through the day, obviously, because of the schedule that I told you
Mm-hmm.
about, or it's very brief, or it's really late at night, one or the other. But that morning time has become our favorite time of the day. And it's become so important to us. We weren't early risers for a long time, but now it's like we want to get up. We want to get in bed early enough so we can get up early enough and feel good, because that time has become very important to us. And I've just proven, to myself so many times, if I sleep in, I'm not as productive. I don't feel as good about the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so that time has been so important to us. But that time of kind of just quietness, and spending time with the Lord and with my wife, and, it just really helps me, think about my day and spend some time then also planning my day, looking at my calendar, and getting ready. But then at night, ultimately, I'm usually working till pretty late,
Mm-hmm.
or, my wife and I will get to spend some time together or whatnot. But that morning time is also time when the kids are still in the bed, and they're sleeping, and it's just us. It's just quiet and time with the Lord as well.
Got it. So you get your time in the morning. That kind of reminds me of The Miracle Morning. I think
Hmm.
it was that I read a while back. Yeah.
So that was a book I read probably 2.5 years ago that helped me think through my morning. Okay.
Oh, got it.
It's funny you bring that up, and I meant to say a minute ago and I forgot, but yes, that book was one that I was reading probably 2.5, 3 years ago, and really helped me think through, like, wait a minute, I don't have a plan for my morning. I'm just kind of getting up whenever, and then you got to rush around, and, and so that helped me to change things in my mindset about my morning, and start to structure some things. And it's ultimately affected our whole family. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I'm grateful for that book and, getting up early.
Wonderful. So what would be a key piece of advice you'd have for new people getting started in the business?
Key piece of advice. Um, we've talked about it, but mindset is so important.
Hmm.
And I think, like if you're not ready to get kicked in the face and get back up and keep going, it's just, you're not going to make it, most likely. It's going to be difficult. It's going to be hard. And most people, I think, very underestimate, the difficulty of starting a business and a brand, and making this happen, especially if you're working full time as well. However, um, a coach having or hiring a mentor was also a big game changer for me. And at the time, I just thought, I can't believe I'm spending this much money. And actually, it was like half as much as what most coaches are now. But at the time, I thought, I can't believe I'm spending this much money on this, but I feel like it's going to be worthwhile. I did a lot of research and, trying to figure out who that needed to be, and felt like I picked a very good coach, and still feel that way. But it was so worthwhile. It was so worthwhile. We see that price tag. However, you really forget about, where that's going to get you a year from now or 2 years from now, and the value that that's ultimately creating. But some accountability and surrounding myself with people that were way ahead of me it was the game changer.
Hmm. Okay. So are there any books or some good reading material that you'd recommend for some new people?
Yes. Um, one I would say that everybody should read is Who Moved My Cheese. If you
Oh,
have
okay.
not read Who Moved My Cheese, and there's even a kids version. I
Mhm.
got it for my kids for Christmas this year. There's Who Moved My Cheese for kids. Get that book. Even if you're an adult, that book is really good. Just, we read it all the way through, in one sitting with my boys, and get, we read it over and over again. They want to read it again and again. And there's so many good lessons there about those characters in that book, Who Moved My Cheese. And so I got it for my sister, and then she made her staff all read it. I mean, it's just the mindset behind those characters in that book will teach you a lot. As far as mindset, there's many others, but and if you go to my website, I've got like a recommendations page where you can see a lot of books that I recommend. But another one, as far as the real estate syndication business, is Joe Fairless's The Best Ever Real Estate Syndication Book. I
Mhm.
can't recommend that one enough. As far as that just really lays out so many things in this business that I didn't know in the very beginning. That now you just, for $50 you can have it right there.
Wonderful. I've heard of that book, Who Moved My Cheese before. I've heard this title. I'm definitely going to pick it up now after you recommended it. I was always curious. I saw the title, I think it was a while back, and I was like, oh, this is quite an interesting title. I was curious, but didn't actually pick it up. But I'm definitely going to get it now.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you should. It's a very easy read, but it has so many implications that are so worthwhile.
Wonderful. So how could people get a hold of you?
They can go to lifebridgecapital.com. We've just launched a brand new website. You'll see so much information there about me and the podcast and our business and properties, that we have that we're managing and that we own. And then you can also email me, Whitney at lifebridgecapital.com, or you can call or text me 540-585-4338.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Whitney. It has been a pleasure speaking to you today, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule, getting on here, and sharing your experience with our listeners.
My pleasure, Don. My pleasure.